Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. Brianna French here with my wonderful colleague,
My name is Dr. David Stanley.
and we are your co facilitators and co chairs of the Healing Practice Team. So, the Healing Practice Team is part of Dr. Helen Neville's presidential initiative of Justice and Joy. And what we are tasked with doing is to try to help Division 17 members, students, affiliates, anyone engage in the practice of healing. And so every month, every quarter, Dr. Neville has a different theme related to this overall presidential initiative. November's theme is around healing practice as a foundation. Pardon me. February's theme is related to healing justice. And then April's theme is related to justice and joy, or healing joy. And so, what we are aimed or trying to do is help the audience, you all, engage in practicing healing methods. So, how do we live out what these kind of constructs are, these initiatives are, and helping, the healers, Division 17, heal themselves or engage in healing? We know we show up better when we do that. So, I will turn it over then to Dr. Stanley to talk a little bit more about what we did for November.
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. French. And so in November, we focused on rest and unrest. And so we know that as researchers, as scholars, practitioners, advisors, there's a lot of things that we have to do throughout each day, throughout our semesters, right? And so it can feel hard to kind of unplug a little bit and engage in you know actual rest that can be rejuvenating and helpful and productive, right? And so we wanted to engage in this process with our team as a way to model and enact these healing practices, this rest and unrest. And so as you can see, what we did is we started with creating a sense of safety through ground rules and agreements. Um, the next phase was focused on grounding. And so it may feel like it was a long process or that we spent a lot of time in that phase, focused on grounding and mindfulness, that it may even feel redundant, but that really helped to create the space that was needed for thoughtful reflection, with the prompts that we engaged with at the end. And so, um, but it's important to also know like how you can engage in this practice, right? So, although this video is quite lengthy, what you can do is pick and choose pieces that feel relevant for you and engage in the practices that feel right. And so you can do this either alone, by yourself, engaging in these practices, or with affinity groups. And so I will turn it over back to Dr. Brianna French to share a little bit more about some additional resources that we are providing to help provide support for individuals who want to engage in these healing practices alone or within affinity groups.
Thank you. So Dr. Neville's team is helping us put together a rich resource packet. In the packet, you'll find the journal prompts themselves that you can reflect on either alone or, with a partner or in groups. And that'll affiliate with the same prompts that we used in our own healing practice with the team. You'll also find the group agreements or touchstones, as Dr. Murthy calls them, as you'll hear her discuss, as a way to set a stage and a sense of safety for your own group. Of course, take and choose what you like. And then you'll find readings and video links that will help facilitate the process, or if you want to just do a deeper dive and learn more about the concepts that we talk about. The final thing that we offer are office hours. And so Dr. Stanley and I will hold space the last Thursday of the month, roughly. And so this month it'll be November 30th from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern. And that's a space for people to hop in, share a little bit about their process and their practice. How did it go? Where did you get stuck? And just offer some opportunity to share what the experience was like or answer some questions for you all. So we hope you find this useful. We hope you engage in the practice. I hope that you leave this presidential initiative feeling rested and joyful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Warm greetings and deep care to all of you who are participating in this journey of healing, justice, and joy. And we warmly welcome you and invite you to partake in our practice community and really utilize any practices and insights that touch you or speak deeply to your own personal journey. So, our first session began with a grounding practice, and this was followed by an exploration of guidelines for safety and care. And then, as a community, we participated in a healing practice as a way to hold our stories of struggle and unrest and to explore ways to resource in self compassion and healing. Want to briefly share some foundational teachings and philosophies that were woven into our communal healing session. I'll start with the statement by Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams Sensei, who speaks that without inner change, there can be no outer change. And without collective change, no change matters. So, many elders and healers and teachers really invite us to contemplate our own positionality in relationship to harm and oppression, as it can open a space for inner work and healing. So, when we explore healing as a process that's first located in the body, it then can help us cultivate an embodied and compassionate awareness of our truth and our stories. So, this is an awareness or a mindfulness that doesn't spiritually or morally or ethically bypass, and instead it centers the truths of racism and casteism and colonialism and all systems of oppression, really. I want to bring in the words of Alice Walker here, and she says, "Healing begins where the wound was made." So, healing really begins with an intention of alleviating the suffering that's inherent in the harm experienced and caused. And ultimately, it engages our humanity and our dignity. So, when we allow our historical truths and accountability to land and to be felt in our bodies and in our hearts, we can then invite ourselves into a relationship with harm and healing. So the first anchor in our session was to orient and ground and arrive safely. So we cultivate safety in our own bodies and in our communal body, so that we can first learn how to be fully present and engaged. And then we're teaching ourselves and we're teaching our nervous system to discern that the pain we encounter in dealing with the brutalities of racism and casteism and systems of oppression, they are not inherently dangerous, but when held in care and in community, they can open up pathways of healing. So the safety cultivation really allows us to nurture a sacred spaciousness inside our own bodies that's really required to hold the depth and the breadth and the full dimensionality of our ancestral, our historical, and our individual stories of grief, of resilience, of love and joy, and all the stories that remain untold. Our second anchor is to explore intentional pathways for refuge, self-care, and healing. So when we truly embody our stories and hold each other's stories in compassionate accountability, we then begin our journey to reckon with the harm done to us and our ancestors, or the harm perpetuated by our ancestors. So we can then attend to the parts of ourselves that need love and care and support. And when we heal, we can heal the ancestors that we carry in us. So such an embodied healing is the soil to cultivate right and ethical action that can nurture embodied justice in the world. I want to leave us with the words of Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh Thai. And he writes, consciousness, awareness, awakening, meditation is not an escape from society, but to come back to ourselves and see what is going on. Once there is seeing, there must be acting. So deep care and best wishes from all of us as you embark on this most heartful journey. And may we all be free from inner and outer harm. Just want to invite and support our continued arrival. So if it's okay with you, feel free to just rest back in your seat. And you can also just release the body. Feel free to make a sound. Moving the body, moving your bones in whatever ways it feels okay and comfortable. And in a way, it's just acknowledging all that this body carries. And at all points through our time together, just giving yourself permission and to be in choice around your body. Even while we practice at different points, not feeling like you have to hold a rigid pose or do anything that's not in alignment with where you are and where we are. So whenever you feel ready, just, if it's okay for you, allow yourself to close the eyes, or you can just take a soft gaze or just rest back. And I want us to be able to welcome ourselves into this sacred space we're creating. Allowing yourself to center in the body or in the breath, whatever supports you. And really taking this time for ourselves to welcome ourselves deeply into the space that we're sharing today. And to the extent that we can, to welcome ourselves to this place we occupy on unceded and stolen lands of Indigenous peoples who've continuously lived since time immemorial. And this land that has been tended to by enslaved African or Dalit people, or depending on which part of the world you are in, the peoples that we have to honor and their descendants whose labor was and continues to be stolen. Really taking a breath and a moment to honor the land ancestors of the places and the countries we're in. Also allowing ourselves to welcome our full selves, all the ways that we're arriving at our space. We're online, and yet, want to acknowledge all the things that we needed to arrange to be here and arrive in this moment. And also welcoming all the parts of us that are still arriving, and all the ways that we've been trying to arrive for a long time. Welcoming those of us who feel at home in the region that we're in, or those who feel that in another place, or for those of us who aren't sure where home is, all of that is welcome too. Just a loving welcome to each of our ethnic, our racial, and our ancestral backgrounds, to the ways that they define and they shape us, and the ways that we're connected to that and not connected to those. Welcoming all of the gender expressions of ourselves and to all the ways that each of us express our sexuality. All of that is welcome. Welcome to our religions, our faiths, our spiritual practices and traditions, and to all of us who choose to not hold a practice, welcoming the questions and the doubts and the searching. All of that is welcome. Making space to welcome each of our complicated relationships to money, to inheritance, to land, or lack of. The places where there's ease, the places where there is struggle, the places where it is complicated, all of that is welcome. Welcome to each of us across all ages, the ways that our numerical age speaks to our particular wisdom in this moment in time. And to the ways that we move outside of age and time. Welcome. Welcoming the work that each of us do in the world, how we define ourselves, whether we call ourselves change makers, or for those who that term doesn't resonate. Welcome to the educators, the researchers, the academics, the learners, the teachers in each of us. All of that is welcome. Welcoming our minds, our intellects. A loving welcome to our bodies with its histories of joys and traumas and all the experiences in between. Welcoming ourselves into whatever wholeness we're able to feel in our body. This particular and this unique container that each of us sits in, and all the forms in which we show up. Welcome to the parts of us that are comfortable right now, and the places of discomfort or dis-ease. Welcoming parts of us that feel very human, and parts of us that feel very interconnected to the universe. Welcoming to the sounds of the animals in my part of the world. All of the sounds in our landscapes are welcome. Welcoming our relationships, relationships we've had to each other, to those who we've known a long time, or to those who we're just meeting for the first time in this space. All of us are welcome. Welcome to all these parts of ourselves. And what we have named here and also not named, those too are welcome. So, whenever you feel ready, feel free to allow the eyes to open and take a look at our circle. And just while giving yourself permission to be in your body, being in whatever comfort you can access, just recognize each other, and from an internal space and in your own way, just really lovingly welcoming each other, seeing each other, And the space that we're creating really is an invitation to be here, to not escape the world, to not move away from it, to really meet and connect with ourselves and with each other in community, and to co-create what we can together. So welcome, welcome in all of these ways. And if it feels okay, I just want to invite us to perhaps place a hand on our heart or on our belly, whatever feels comfortable. And just continue to warmly and lovingly invite ourselves into this space and to be embodied to the extent it feels okay, feels right for us. And really seeing and holding ourselves with deep care, kindness, and understanding. And cultivating this connection, nurturing this connection to ourselves and with each other. A warm, warm, beautiful welcome to each of us. So feel free to just take a moment, open the eyes, move, and support your arrival into this space that you are physically in, as well as our communal space. And I want to invite us to experience the joy of a practice offered by, as many of you know, Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams Sensei, who practices radical Dharma. And so perhaps we can all continue to be in community and share a practice. Yeah. So while we turn that recording on, just make sure you have everything you need. Make sure your space feels comfortable, and feel free to sit in whatever way supports you, supports your practice. And at all points in the practice, remembering we're in choice and allowing the body to move as you may need it to.
You'll want to find your seat, right? So your buttocks firmly connected. Now, often we have buttocks and we have, actually, I'll say your sits bones, right? So you want to find the bony protrusions and you want to extend them backwards and find them really connected to the seat beneath you. So you're not kind of sitting on your haunches, kind of hovering, but really connected and rooted. And then, to the best of your ability, get your feet on the earth beneath you. And this is best accomplished by not leaning back in the chair, right? But actually sitting forward and allowing yourself to be held upright. And trusting in the earth beneath you to hold you. And what we're doing here is we're going to actually extend our crown towards the sky and feel our full length and the dignity that is inherent to each of us. And inherent means we don't have to earn it, and it cannot be taken away. It's a choice that we connect to it. It's ours. And as we extend ourselves into the earth beneath us, we feel our sense of integrity. So dignity above and an integrity below. It's like a taproot, right? Where we fully connect to ourselves first before we feel ourselves from left to right and right to left, the full width of our being, allowing your chest to be open, heart exposed. In our width, we find our sense of relationship. First, the full breadth of our own being, and then the space around us. And as we feel into the space around us, we can extend our field of attention further and feel the person next to us on either side. And if you're feeling spacious, you might extend that even further to the person on the other side of them. And then more and more, just as it feels comfortable to you. Maybe feeling yourself right up to the walls, to the ceiling. And of course, we do our work on behalf of the generations that are yet to come. And so we are very familiar with a sense of connecting to our front body, our face, our belly, our chest, forehead. But none of our work would be possible without the generations that have come before us. And so we feel the support of our ancestors, of the women that have come before us, all of that support at our back. Whether that's our blood lineage known to us, or the lineage of women, bold women, known and unknown, recognized and unrecognized, we can feel the support at our back. All of that is only meaningful if we choose to take up the space in between right here and right now. So we must take our place between the future generations and the past. We feel that in our depth. And finally, the most important thing, and for many of us the most challenging, is to allow our center of gravity to drop down out of our heads, right into our bellies, and to feel and to allow to rest what matters to us right at our core. Not up in our head, not in some vague sense somewhere out there, but to really allow what matters to us to be held. In the very core of our belly, energy dropping down, firing the action that we take in the world, keeping us moving. And whenever we forget why we're here, whenever we feel like we're lost, we come back to what matters. We come back to what moves us again and again and again.
So taking a few moments to just soak Sensei's words in and allowing the body to continue arriving and giving ourselves the permission to continue to access that inherent dignity as we journey through our time here today. Whenever you're ready, we can just allow our eyes to open, move. making ourselves at home. But perhaps whenever we're ready, we could just take a moment to hear each other and have a check-in and maybe a word or a share about how we are, where we are right now.
Definitely feeling relaxed right now. A lot more aware of how the positioning of my body um, and the connection to the ground helped me to feel grounded too. Um, and I just appreciate both that last kind of piece that we just watched and you welcoming us into the space and all of our self that we bring um, into the space. And so that has me feeling really good and energized and just excited for what's to come moving forward.
I have to agree. I'm feeling, well, one thing I agree with everything that David's mentioned so far. I'm feeling very grounded. And I think I also became aware, throughout this entire welcoming process of just how much stress I hold in my body and being able to kind of shake it and release it and roll it away has been very helpful. And it's bringing it to my mind, just kind of like, okay, just let it go. So I think there are a lot of times where I feel the need to, like, a lot of time my stress does show up in my body instead of like emotionally. And so just feeling myself or telling myself, just let it go and be. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you.
I think I echo everything that's been said. I think the only thing that'll add for me is sort of this this feeling of like presence here with you all and kind of space, which I feel like outside of this current present moment has felt elusive and hard to find. So kind of feeling a lot of space and abundance in this moment.
I feel like I'd echo what other people are saying. Something I'm realizing and coming into the space is just how difficult it is for me to like sort of let go of my dissertation and everything else that's happening in the world to like fully come into this space. So, but that being said, even though like I'm struggling to be fully present, I definitely I feel like I'm more present here than I've been in other places in the past week, if that makes sense, even though I'm still like, Vanessa, I know like you can do better. That's a judgment. But yeah. So just acknowledging I'm both here and trying to be more here.
Vanessa, I really appreciate you sharing that because that is very much how I feel as well. So I definitely can identify. I feel like I'm like 60% in terms of feeling kind of grounded and rooted in this space. And I also really appreciate the ways that we were welcomed into the space because I think that helped me to settle my like monkey mind a little bit, kind of like that's a term I can use in this moment. But I guess I just also find myself really like yearning for more. So when we were done listening to the speaker, I was like, oh wait, but I'm still trying to get there. And so I appreciate the naming of how judgment shows up in the process of moving towards grounding, and also kind of makes me think of self-compassion, trying to work on having that grace and that self-compassion for myself to show up where I'm at.
I'm feeling really grateful for this opportunity. It doesn't, while we are connecting in a professional capacity, it feels really, I guess is the point, healing or yeah. And so it doesn't feel like work, even though it's technically work related, I suppose. And I'm just grateful that we can model this for other people in some ways with the messiness and the complexity and the distractions. And and all that it comes with. So just super grateful to you all, very appreciative of you, Mira, for offering your leadership, and then to Dr. Helen Neville for her Justice and Joy initiative. And just a kudos to Reverend Angel Kyoto about the mind, how it's hard to sink into the body. I definitely resonated with that and had to even tell myself, what does that mean? How do I not stay in my mind and feel the body? So loving it.
Other thing that stood out to me about what Reverend Angel Kyoto mentioned was this idea of kind of like not only first centering yourself like vertically and like to the ground and to the ceiling, but then like as wide as you are and taking up space. And that whole idea of taking up space really, I don't know, it makes me think about what we think about in terms, or what I think about in terms of like when I'm in a space and speaking up, for example. I think that's what I think about when I think about taking up space, but the actual body in taking up the space that is inherent, right? Like it's unearned and it's yours, right? At the same time. And so being able to kind of stand firm in where you are, and being appreciative of where you currently are in the space that you're taking up with your body. Because a lot of times, like Brianna was saying, that especially in academia, we're all in our mind all the time, and we use that, and that's our, bread and butter right there. And that's something that, we work with clients on as well. And so I think being able to really think about the body and being in that space is very important to the grounding process. And so I really appreciated that in the video.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, sort of taking up our own space of like the extending that out to how we are connected to each other, both like those of us who are here, those of us who are in our past, our ancestors, and those of us like who are to come in the future. I just thinking about even when we are like quote unquote alone, we're not alone. And yeah, that just feels like really healing to me to think about.
I am taking joy and agreeing with all of that has been said. And I think in some ways, all of our hearts are so heavy, have always been heavy, will always be heavy. But it is also so heartful that we are here in a circle and in community as just really an act of resistance. And like you were saying, David, just that piece about really accessing that space internally, because depending on our histories, we probably have learned to hold a breath, because even breath has become a privilege and not a birthright, or we've learned to hold our bodies in a certain way as it may have repercussions, or we've not been able to leave our bodies or move our bodies. So this piece of really be beyond, and I appreciate you acknowledging, Brianna, the academic space, the workspace, the professional, and how can we be healers without healing ourselves? How can we write about healing? And so this piece that, that this whole community has come together for is such a beautiful act of resistance in the midst of a lot of distress. So I love that 60% breakdown. Yes, could go down to 40, it could go down 20 or come back 100, but it's true, that continuing to arrive, and that's the practice, that's the resistance. So I am feeling just so in community with you all. If anybody has something more to share, please do. And if we are okay for now, maybe we could just sort of transition to really setting our container here, just setting our space, and maybe looking at what are some places of refuge for us as we continue to do this journey together. Yeah, so maybe we could take a few moments to scan, and if there are particular people, we can just go around and read some of those, or if some particular guidelines speaks to folks, maybe you can just read that aloud for our community here.
Always by invitation resonates with me right now. It is never quote unquote share or die. You will determine the extent to which you want to participate in our discussions and activities. Appreciate that.
For me, the first one of be present, extending, and pursuing welcome. Set aside the usual distractions of things undone from yesterday, things to do tomorrow. Bring all of yourself to the work. We all learn most effectively in spaces that welcome us. Welcome others in this place and this work, and presume that you are welcomed.
I love listening. Listen intently to what is said. Listen to the feelings beneath the words. To listen another's soul into life, into a condition of disclosure and discovery, may be almost the greatest service that any human being ever performs for another. Writer Douglas Steere. Listen to yourself also. Strive to achieve a balance between listening and reflecting, speaking and acting. I love that one.
Yeah, and for the next one, no fixing. That one's really speaking to me as well as a fixer. Each of us is here to discover our own truths, to listen to our own inner teacher, to take our own inner journey. We are not here to set someone else straight or to help right another's wrong, to fix or correct what we perceive as broken or incorrect in others.
One that's really speaking to me right now is the identifying assumptions. Our assumptions are usually invisible to us, yet they undergird our worldview and thus our decisions and our actions. By identifying our assumptions, we can then set them aside and open our viewpoints to greater possibilities.
I mentioned judgment earlier, so suspending judgment is definitely one that connects for me. Set aside your judgments. By creating a space between judgments and reactions, we can listen to the other and to ourselves more fully, and thus our perspectives, decisions, and actions are more informed.
I can go down. I love the one, speak your truth. And I feel like speaking your truth and attending to impact go together in a way. Saying what is in your heart, trusting that your voice will be heard and your contribution respected. Your truth may be different from, even the opposite of what another in the circle has said. Speaking your truth is not debating with or correcting or interpreting what another has said. Own your truth by speaking only for yourself, using I statements. And that goes in tandem with attending to impact as well. Recognizing that we may cause harm, we're in different levels of awareness, particularly given our varied identities, positionality to privilege, and lived experiences. This might happen, and be accountable for the impact you may have contributed to.
When things get difficult, turn to wonder. If you find yourself disagreeing with another, becoming judgmental, shutting down in defense, try turning to wonder. I wonder what brought her to this place. I wonder what my reaction teaches me. I wonder what they're feeling right now.
I feel like I definitely resonating with the respect silence, just because sometimes silence can be difficult to sit with, but silence is a rare gift in our busy world. After you or another has spoken, take time to listen, reflect, and fully, without immediately filling the space with words. Yeah.
With regard to maintain confidentiality, we create a safe space by respecting the confidential nature and content of discussions held in our circle. What is said in the circle remains here. Any shares outside of this group require consent. And to that respect, we will also collectively decide what we want to share with the public as part of our process after we're done.
And if we'd like, in just the interest of time, we can just take a few moments to scan each of these. And if we want to speak to any of these, perhaps we can, or we'll just take it in. And these are things we'll just keep revisiting and cultivating. If that's okay with folks. Yeah. And Helene, I think your wish is going to be granted, our collective wish. We're going to hear a little more of Reverend Angel Sensei's practice. So if people feel okay, if there's anything to clarify, perhaps we could, or if not, we can just move into a practice period. What do folks think? Yeah. And so I think we might start with a small piece that Sensei explains about the sky practice, and then she leads us into it. So shall we? Yeah.
Everything. And so that if you have the right view of things, it kind of sets you up to be able to take everything in a very different way. So if you have a depressing view towards things, obviously you're going to see things in a depressing way. So what I came up with is the notion of a sky view, and I use sky because the sky represents boundless spaciousness in a time that a lot of us are feeling constrained and contracted, whether that's by a sense of fear or just being in our homes too long, or uncertainty about what's going on with our work lives. And what sky stands for is, first of all, self-care. And what self-care means for me in this particular time is that each of us have to be really radically in agency about our own health and our own well-being. We can't expect that other people will, do the right thing all the time. So we have to assess our own situation so that we can take the steps that are necessary to protect ourselves. I was sharing with the team that I'm a high-risk person, and so I had to really think about that. I kind of go around in my life without thinking about that. So for me, the self-care made me really clear about the kind of things I need to do, to really up the ante on taking care. And then there's kindness, that's the K. Everybody's in this, and we're in it in very different ways, but we are really facing this kind of together. And so we have to invoke kindness in ourselves to remember that a lot of us have habits, and so we won't always do things in the best way. We'll make mistakes. We'll kind of get closer than 6 feet with each other. We'll run into each other. Maybe people will get a little bit short of temper. And so if we can remember kindness for ourselves and for others, that will open up a little bit more spaciousness. And then finally, this one is probably more unexpected and kind of counterintuitive, and that Y is for yearning. And the reason I bring yearning is because a lot of times when we're in situations that feel uncertain to us, we contract. And Buddhism has this notion of a word called dukkha, and it means something like suffering. But a lot of people go suffering, it's all about suffering. I don't want to hear that. And the way that I translate it in modern times is that it's contraction. It's literally our bodies contract, our minds kind of get smaller. And so the counterintuitive practice of yearning is actually to acknowledge that we have yearning, that we wish it were different, that we are hopeful for people to be well, for people to take care of themselves. And so to actually write those things down, to write the things that we yearn for, because yearning, rather than make us feel a sense of loss, actually inspires hope for us, and again, breathes some space into the situation. So that's the sky view, is self-care, kindness, and yearning.
Great. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it. Should we do a little bit of meditation? I suspect it will play directly off of what you've just said.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things about this sense of contraction is that when we're confronted with experiences that are uncertain or unknown, or we feel fearful about, it is actually quite natural for the body to contract, for our minds really actually to get smaller. We kind of start to limit ourselves. So it's challenging enough for many of us to be stuck at home and feel like we can't move around in the way that we want to. But what we can do is we can create more space in our experience of situations, surprisingly, by being more present to the situation rather than contracting away. And so we kind of lean in and allow ourselves to be present. And the thing that gets us most present is to really come back in contact with our own bodies. And so I'd like to lead just a quick meditation around being present in our bodies. And the way that I start to think about that and help people to start to think about that is really to start with our feet first of all, and just feeling the weight of your own feet, your toes. You might want to wiggle your toes a little bit wherever you're standing or sitting or wherever it is that you're checking this out, and feel just the weight of the soles of your feet as they, connect with the earth beneath you, the ground in your socks or shoes. And allow that out breath that each of us have to be the thing that drops more weight into the soles of the feet. And next, that's followed by allowing our sense of weight to drop into our buttocks, and so your seat. And feel as you allow the breath to slow, or maybe it's moving a little bit quickly. Whatever it is, we can just notice it and not try to control it in any way. But on the out breath, allowing that out breath to carry with it a sense of dropping in and feeling the weight of our own seat connected to, again, the chair beneath us. Or if you're standing, just really feeling the full dimensionality of your body as you connect to the back body. And you can take an in-breath, and as you take that in-breath, feel the expanse of your chest. And notice what arises when you feel into the expanse of the chest, because it really holds for us a sense of our vulnerability. And when we let ourselves be aware of what's going on in our heart space and our chest area, we might notice a little tenderness kind of begin to open up, and we can just invite that in. And again, with the out breath, allowing ourselves to feel the fullness. You could think of it as heaviness, but maybe the fullness of our own heart space and what we're carrying in our heart and what we're carrying in our sense, within our sense of vulnerability. Maybe you notice a little bit of tenderness, maybe fear, maybe curiosity. And you can let that curiosity extend itself. As you draw a breath in, and on the out breath again, allowing the weightiness of your own shoulders to be felt. Carry a lot around on our shoulders, in our neck, tension in our back often. And so if we can just let the out breath kind of drive the shoulders down a little bit and really allow the shoulders and the neck and the muscles to rest. Kind of hang, rather than holding the elbows too tight or close to the body, just letting the shoulders and the weightiness of our own shoulders and everything that we're carrying just kind of rest in the structure of our own body, and feeling the grace of the fact that we can hold these bodies, and that whatever burdens or challenges we're carrying, we can hold those as well in the spaciousness of our body. right alongside with the joy and the yearning and the possibilities. And then finally, I like to think about really what matters to me right now. When I think about what matters in this moment in any kinds of challenge or crises or difficult experiences, I really want to come back, and I invite you to come back and connect to what matters in spite of whatever challenges you're facing. What are the things that motivate you, that inspire you, that you yearn for, that give you joy, that invite you to feel more present in your own body and allow that to settle into your belly? And we let it settle into our belly because that's where our action all comes from. And so when we let what matters to us connect with our belly, we begin to open up space for creativity and possibility of what it is that may come to us next as what is ours to do, and maybe let the things that is not ours to do in this moment fall away. And so in this allowing of in-breath, we feel the sensations of our body, and then out-breath, allowing the body to rest, the muscles to relax. In the face, the cheeks, the jaw, the neck, the shoulders. In breath, and again out breath as we soften into the chest and the heart, the ribs, the belly. Soften in the buttocks, the hips, the thighs. Soften even your knees, your ankles, your toes. All of that weightiness becoming not heaviness, but rather a resting of on the earth, resting in the presence of just what is in front of us right now. And meeting each moment that unfolds as it unfolds with that sky view, the sense of boundless space. It invites us to be present. No need to change the situation, just to meet it as it is. Knowing that self-care, kindness, and yearning, allowing for each of those, returns us to the present of this moment with all of us together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We've got some questions coming in. H. Jin asks, how do I lean into / be present when I just feel burnt out?
Yeah, one of the things I'm thinking about a lot is that.
And we have some burning questions as well. Let's maybe take a few moments to continue to settle into that practice. Just the yearning to not have the practice end is a good reminder that we're always in practice, and that no matter what we're doing, despite the busyness of our lives, there's a way to continue to invite ourselves into the presence. And Sensei's teaching about how to be in the present is so linked to what kind of relationship, how can we be in the present without a deep care for ourselves, a kindness for ourselves, and really acknowledging that yearning. So giving ourselves this time and continuing our journey to just rest and connect. And allow these words to just float around your practice. So we are in our journey going to move into a space of exploring what we yearn for, what our stories are. And so I want to make an offering for our contemplation. Allow the words to fall upon your heart. It was a beautiful poem written by Laura Johnson. This was around the time of the pandemic. And it speaks to some of the unrest that we've been working with and wanting to work with in our group. And so she speaks, the deepest and darkest parts of each night since my daughter was born some months ago, I've spent startling from fleeting and sweaty sleep, hand darting out instinctively, holding my breath as I reach for hers. Finding that soft round belly, I rest my palm and outstretched fingers there, cupped slightly like an oyster shell, locating its rise and fall. That sweetest, most kissable belly, protruding like the Buddha's, bobbing like a buoy on calm sea, each wave of breath a gift, given and returned. Reciprocity in real time, source of all life, our birthright, this breath. So, my dear people, let's just take a breath as we move into our time, more deeply into our time together today. Watching her silhouette in the dark, dim light, illuminating pieces here and there, I marvel at this fullness of breath, uncensored roundness of belly, undisturbed embodiment, a liberation I lost a long time ago. Taught by patriarchy to take up less space at the expense of my breath, taught by capitalism to be productive at the expense of my breath, taught by modernity to disconnect from my body at the expense of my breath. This violent mind-body separation, joining all those other power-laden fragmentations of modern supremacist culture. Reason severed from emotion, self from world, human from nature, men from women and others. She says white from other, and we can add humans othering humans. And on it goes, each false binary blurs reality of relations, each a breath diminishing life, dimming violence, meeting at the roots of this dissociated culture. My dear people, let's take a breath. An invitation to breathe in the midst of this. A practice to breathe in the midst of this. My sleeping baby daughter, free but for collective trauma that lives in her bones as in mine, as in yours, doesn't know the ways this world will work to take her breath or how her privilege will spare it or that for this she owes a debt. She doesn't know of the ancestral land onto which she was born, of native breath, stolen and marginalized, ongoing cultural genocide, or of the missing and murdered indigenous women, breath snuffed out like candles in a storm. This was at the time of George Floyd, so she writes, she doesn't know that she has turned just 6 months old. George Floyd and so many others since cried out for breath and for his mother, joining so many other Black lives smothered beneath the knee of state-sanctioned violence and white supremacy. And we might add all other supremacies in the world. Breath withheld, life stolen, trauma perpetuated, power upheld. My dear community, let's breathe together. Taking a breath here. And my sleeping daughter doesn't know that before she lived just half a year, the world was brought to its knees by a pandemic that preyed on our ability to breathe. taking breath from BIPOC in particular, illuminating, intersecting injustices like a sky-opening crack of lightning, no more hiding despite the masks we wear these days. She doesn't know that long before COVID-19, oppressed peoples have struggled to breathe, from proximity to poisons, from stifling prisons and camps, from sleeping in their own beds, from preferences of pronouns, from fear in public spaces, commemorating enslavement, nervous systems frazzled and fried, breath held in, life dimmed. An invitation to breathe, my dear people. Let's breathe together. And she doesn't know that this virus was derived from ecological devastations that deprives human and more than human kin of their right to breathe, or that this ongoing exploitations called the Anthropocene has ushered in sixth mass extinction, global climate catastrophe, applauded as progress by the powers that be. Smoke from its wildfires, water from its floods fill lungs already full of grief that lives here. And like us, the earth can't breathe, and like us, she grieves. So let's take this invitation to breathe. And when I teach my daughter this, I will teach her too that this grief, thick and heavy as it may be, is a lifeboat on this rocky sea, a calm and sacred ground, a portal. For we have swallowed the lie that emotions should be stifled. And as we stuff them down in dark depths of bodies, aching from things left unfelt, we hold our breath, afraid to let in, afraid to let go. But what if each inhale could open our hearts? Each exhale, an act of surrender. Our great grief metabolized with breath in ritual together. What if in this sick and dying culture, gasping out its last stolen breath, we relearned how to breathe and breathed deep? What if we stitch back together all that has been severed, precious breath by precious breath, making space for all beings to breathe? What if breath for reconciliation, reparations, revolution, renewal? Let's invite ourselves to breathe. Here now, in this dark, deep night, I marvel at my baby's breath, so full and free, so much to teach her, but she more to teach me. Like how to breathe with my whole body, like how to live embodied and whole, like how to make each wave of breath a gift, given and returned. Reciprocity in real time, source of all life. Our birthright, this breath. So this is our ongoing cultivation with practice. Our birthright to keep arriving, keep yearning, keep breathing, keep returning to wholeness. So, these are seamless moments, so taking your time. And I want to invite us to take a few moments to continue sitting, soaking up whatever you need to soak up, or if you'd like, just scribing if something speaks to you, or taking a moment to move the body, take a break. Really just see whatever you may need, what best serves you. The invitation is to speak to whatever is emerging for us and what's present here for us.
I'm noticing somatically, as I'm trying to pay attention to what's happening in my body, is as you were reading the poem, I felt tears welling up, and some of the lines about just reminding us to breathe, and can't recall how it went, but something about being dissociated, the push for productivity, capitalism and patriarchy, and all the things that separate us from our breath, and this invitation to come back to it. And I'm not sure, I think the tearfulness is just a mix of grief or longing for to 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 feel connected or integrated as opposed to disconnected and scattered, as well as gratitude to create space for that or to live into that. Um, yeah, so, and trying not to push it. I think like the desire to stuff the tears down is strong, and so I'm trying to just let whatever come.
I really resonate with that. I think for me, I noticed the same thing of like the sort of welling behind my eyes and that sort of then like the judgment that comes with that of like you were saying, like, no, hold it in, like keep it down, which then just fits right in with the poem of how much we try to disconnect and separate ourselves up from those somatic and like really connecting experiences. Yeah, I noticed that, and I noticed like towards the end of it, I the like welling had kind of gone back down, and I was sort of like relieved. Like I was like, oh, okay, well that'll, you know, be gone for when we actually engage. But yeah, I felt it too, and it's like this weird thing of I feel so like at the most human and connected when I am sort of like at that tearful place, and so much of me pushes against having that be present and having that be like seen by other people.
I feel like as somebody who's in pretty much full-time clinical practice, I always think about how much time during the week I spend holding space for people, and that idea of kind of pushing back or pushing aside my own emotions to, be present for someone else. I think it's just always really striking when that's like reflected back to me, or like through conversations like this, or when I just am kind of thinking about the nature of the work that we do. So I think this is just another instance of somebody mentioned the word grateful earlier, and just feeling very grateful for spaces like this where we can come and we can show up as healers in whatever form we're in, to kind of get a little bit of replenishment so we can continue to hold some of that space. I also have to say, I love the image in the poem of the baby breathe. Like, I mean, I'm kind of, love watching babies sleep. That sounds so weird to say out loud, but kind of reference that a lot with my clients too, like the idea of like breathing from your stomach. And I feel like the author just did a really beautiful job of like, I think there was like a line in the poem where she talked about the like learning, like breathing with your entire body, and that's something that we unlearn. And so I also want to say thank you to Mira for bringing that poem into this space, because I feel like it was just a really wonderful, it just painted a really wonderful picture. It just kind of created some really healing images for me during the practice.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like I'm kind of like bouncing off what Celine just said about like, as a therapist, we kind of have to like hold a lot of space for other people. And then also as a grad student, I'm a therapist part-time, and then I'm a student, but like, okay, this year I'm not teaching, but I was teaching last year, but just thinking about like all the different hats I have to wear and the places I have to be able to show up and hold for other people. And then also kind of tapping into what Bree was saying about like, feeling the emotion sort of coming up and then being like, oh no, I don't really want to do that right now. And then also linking back to what I said before about how like, maybe I'm like 50, 60% into this space. I think maybe more 70 now, but still trying to come into it and kind of linking that all together and sort of wondering like how much of it is like when things are stressful, I sort of go away from my emotions because it's like I don't have the time to deal with this. If I let myself fully feel it, who knows how much is gonna come out, and I don't necessarily have the time to fully sit with it in the way it deserves to be sat with. But if I do that, I'm a grad student, I have all these responsibilities, like nothing's gonna get done. So I'm just, I guess, naming that and like putting that all together. And again, like appreciative for this space that even if it's like I'm still struggling to fully get in it, I guess just being able to at least name and make that connection for me was helpful. Yeah.
I think that awareness is so powerful, Vanessa, as you just talked about. And it kind of relates to the piece that Valine mentioned, about unlearning how to breathe with our full body, our whole body. And that was particularly something that stood out in the poem to me, when she talked about being socialized to disconnect from our body and our breath. And I was just like, wow, never thought about that fully. And that's just something that's really resonating with me. And as I have a young child, 1 year old, I get to see her sleeping and, the breath in her stomach going up and down. And that was definitely something that really resonates as well. But in the poem, they also talked about like native breath and ancestral breath and the people whose who breath was taken, right? Their ability to breathe was constricted and taken from them. And then she also talked about how like COVID preyed on our ability to breathe, right? And so just so many things connected with the breath, which is connected with, humanity and humanness. Also other animals and things like that. But, humanity without breath, there is none of it. And so I think that also speaks to what the previous lady we looked at, I can't remember her name right now, with the sky view and the why in sky, right? This yearning. And I think what I'm feeling right now is this yearning to be able to breathe and just stay grounded and stay present, to be appreciative of kind of where I am in the moment, and knowing that I don't have to worry about what's coming next because it's going to come anyway. And so what can I do now to kind of just kind of honor where I'm at right now in the space? So a lot of things coming together for me, and I really appreciate this healing space right now.
Yeah, David, that's the piece that I was going to bring in because I think that's what's really moving me right now is just having the opportunity to be in this space and then see the interactions among you all and seeing, how we're receiving each other's words. I see a lot of head nods, and even though we're all on our different journeys, our different healing journeys, we're at different points in our lives. Some of us are students, some of us are no longer students, some of us are far into the field. But there's this thing that connects us, and you can see it by the head nods. I was whenever I took a moment to just kind of write down, I wanted to write down some of the emotions, and a lot of those are emotions that you all have named. So things like thinking about the pain of my ancestors, but also the joy, the pride, the fullness of this moment, thinking about grief and how all of this is showing up in this space. I think it's just a really beautiful moment. And I really, really feel connected. And I don't know, my heart just feels very full just to be in this space with you all. Like, thank you. Just so grateful.
I too, my reaction is just to one giant, slow, embodied nod. Yeah, I'm just weaving in my body as I'm hearing your shares, around the tears, Brianna, you mentioned, and Nick, you mentioned the tears, and then you talked about just our bodies as healers, doing clinical practice, doing writing that is about justice, or just our bringing that peace in. Spaciousness, David, and continued arriving, Vanessa, that really spoke to me as well. And Latrice, absolutely, it's so beautiful and just so hopeful, in the last couple of weeks for me in the practice, what's been showing up and with Sensei's practice has been just a lot of tightness, which I identified as fear, and a lot of distress, which is sort of like the surface waves of like this deep water sorrow, just the war that's broken out in Israel, the ongoing war in Ukraine, all of the things that keep happening to our people back in the US, our Black brothers and sisters, our Indigenous BIPOC folk. And, one of the things that was really painful was the perhaps people heard about it, the vetoing of the caste discrimination bill by Newsom, and which was a statewide bill that would have addressed caste discrimination that happens not just here in India, that to our Dalit brothers and sisters, but back all in the diaspora. And being a Brahmin-bodied person of a dominating caste, it's just very heavy. Nothing that we haven't encountered before, from not equal positionalities, but different positionalities, not like the same suffering, but different, or even equal sufferings. But it was really just difficult. And here in India, it's just caste apartheid everywhere, all the time. So really this practice, just hearing you all, being in community, the ways that we have been taught by capitalism, by casteism, racism, white supremacy, colonialism, all this imperialism, as the teachers talk about and you all write about, we all work with, it's like in the body. It's like, and the compartmentalization, I've grieved now, my practice is over, I have so many other things to do, or I come to practice and I can't come in because I have been disconnected to survive. So, just a lot of pain. And I love the pieces of self-care, the breath as a reclamation, as a reckoning, and even a healing from an ancestral community that has perpetuated harm because they were imprisoned in their own conditionings, So just sitting with what you all said, and just the Latrice, what you said just like made my heart swell as well. Just the joy of the relief of being in community, where we just try to restore each of our humanities. So.
Mira, what you said sort of prompted to mind something that when you were reading the poem, like came up for me. And I think it, I think it's easy to connect with our own like identities or communities. But at one point you had talked about sort of pronouns and it just made me think about everything that's happening around the world, but particularly within the US around like the strip of humanity and human rights for trans individuals. And yeah, it's just something that it's so interconnected to other forms of oppression, and we can't separate. Like we talk about these experiences as like siloed, right? Of thinking about caste, and as you were saying, in India, and we think about that as separate from the lack of access to care and rights as trans folks within the US, and they're just also connected. And I think as somebody who like uses my brain a lot and is connected in my brain, it's so easy to stay connected in that place and to sort of feel a bit of hopelessness. But I think, I don't know, just like being here with you all, and Latrice, what you said about, yeah, just like the like gratitude and hope that can come, I think is really something that I always try to come back to. But amidst everything happening in the world and the pain and suffering and historically, and it's hard sometimes to stay with that hope and not get caught up in the suffering.
I just want to keep inviting us to take a breath, even as we, continue talking, resting and self-caring. And Nick, when a friend and colleague of mine who writes about, she talks about just legislating identities that and these that there is something, at least what's in my body is the centrality of caste in my body, and how that is not disconnected in my body with the centrality of anti-Blackness. If I don't work with the distress and the pain that truth brings, and yet the truth is so relieving, then it won't allow me to be in integrity with, my Black siblings and colleagues and friends. And if I don't work on the genocide perpetrated here in these local, the Adivasis and the indigenous groups of where I'm residing right now, in no way do I have integrity around working with indigenous folks in any countries that I'm an immigrant in. So I think just that, and so doing that piece, the truth is so painful, and the self-care is radical, but that is humanizing too, and so relieving, and brings community. Like it allows me to enter in integrity with us. And so I love that quote. Let me just see, I might have it. Is it Leela Watson? She says, let me pull it up. If you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together and let us self-care together, love together. We all know that one. So
I wrote that down as you were talking, Nick and David. Just the sense that oppression is created. What am I saying? popped in my head was all of these ways to dehumanize. The term makes sense, of course, right? But for some reason, it just dawned on me. It's like disconnecting from the human. So it's if we're thinking of trying to live fully and be fully and breathe fully, and these ways of stifling and imprisoning who we are, or parts of who we are, makes that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm not able to articulate it, but it just makes so much more sense than if we can connect to the living, loving connection between us all, then that would be in and of itself radical, maybe. Work in progress.
If I may, just wondering, we can speak and share, but just checking in with our bodies and seeing what's present. And just taking a moment, allowing some care. You can place a hand on your heart or whatever feels good, rest back, but just seeing what's present in the body. What are ways that we can really allow ourselves to yearn and care? With permission, one of the teachers shared one time Toni Morrison's words that are so beautiful from the Beloved, and she says, in this here place we flesh that weeps, laughs, flesh that dances on bare feet and grass. Love it hard. With permission, she speaks to healing Black bodies, and so we come into this with our own positionalities and with allowances and permission. But she says, love your hands, love them, raise them up and kiss them, touch others with them, pat them, stroke them on your face. Love your mouth. This is flesh that needs to be loved. Feel that need to rest and to dance. Backs that need support. Sensei talked about that. Our backs are made up of our mothers and our grandmothers and all the women who resisted, whether they were imprisoned, their resistance was imprisoned in the bones. Shoulders that need arms, strong arms. Love your neck, put a hand on it, grace it, stroke it, and hold it up. And all your inside parts, that they just as soon slop for hugs. You got to love them. The dark liver, love it, and the beat and the beating heart. More than eyes or feet, more than lungs that have yet to draw free air, she says. More than your life-holding womb and your life-giving private parts. Love your heart, for this is the price. And we read Toni Morrison in another kind of resistance in these times. How do folks feel? Is there anything that folks want to share that needs to be spoken, heard, of our stories, of our experiences of unrest, or if folks want to share how we care and attend to ourselves.
That last piece you just shared from Toni Morrison has me thinking about the just wanting to like turn towards my body with love as opposed to shame or frustration or shoulds. I think the outcome could be the same. Like I'd like to be more healthful, but I've been coming at it from a angry, oh, why am I so lazy? Why am I not doing da da da? As opposed to like love, like keep doing a cute little pooch or whatever it needs to be, as opposed to some like I hate let me back it up and not be seen. So I really appreciate that. And if it leads to more helpful things, then great. But that doesn't have to be the goal, I guess.
That reminds me of what Trisha Hershey from the NAP ministry talks about, of like the radical act of resting, and how even like when we think about that, we kind of go to the place of we should rest, because then when we rest, we're more efficient. like that's not that we should just rest because we should rest and our bodies need it. And but how like quickly we go to that place of like, yeah, I'll rest so that I am a better worker. Yeah. And I don't know, like for thinking about, Mira, what you said of like, what do we do in this practice of unrest and rest, is she said something that really has stuck with me, and I'm trying to live it in my body. But this idea of like, be present, be in the moment, and the chips will fall where they will, and we'll navigate that as it comes. And so kind of, I think so much we live in like, well, if I do this, then what's going to happen? And her sort of thing of like living into rest, and what happens will happen, and you'll navigate that then. And I'm really trying to embody that. Yeah, and it's hard to do in the capitalist, anti-Black patriarchic world that we live in. So
I love that. And it also makes me think about like the responsibility that we have to give ourselves grace in the process, right? Like it is difficult to rest in a in a capitalistic society, right? And it's also very important to do so. And it's radical, right? And so it's not going to be easy. Anything radical is not easy. And it, involves sacrifice as well. And I think it may not always go exactly as planned, right? And I think giving ourselves grace along the way is just as important in that process. So that's something that I will continue to try to do as I move forward in resting and breathing and as I yearn, but also to give myself grace as well.
I was just gonna say, like, in addition to thinking about how like it can be difficult to rest, something I often remind myself is that like I am going to end up resting regardless. Either it's going to be an intentional, proactive act on my part, or it's going to be my body and my mind being like, we've gone too hard. We're shutting down. You have no control. Like, I'm taking over this right now, which like I know I worked myself I started grad school when the pandemic started. So I started fall 2019, and then the pandemic started the next semester. And then I was in Minneapolis during the unrest, and I'm still trying to like go through all the school stuff. Like everything is going. So like my second year, I was just like burnt out because I did not allow myself any rest my first year. And just like that was such like a terrible experience to be like, because I did not honor my body's need, because I thought I was like superhuman for some reason. My body was like, actually, no, I need rest. You didn't give it to me. Maybe, yeah. So I think that's something that also comes up to me to be like, we're resting at some point. Like, let's figure out a way when it's like on my terms rather than something that just feels out of my control. Yeah.
Vanessa, that was just resonates with what I was, what came up for me. And David, this morning you said you slept, and I was like, yes, because we all talked about needing to sleep. I think a few weeks ago, I was like, you are a deep practitioner. And you know, it's true, because a lot of like the colonization of mindfulness is do what the capitalistic culture demands of you, and then wake up at 3:30 a.m. and sit in your most rigid pose and do the most strenuous yoga, so you stretch every limb out, as if that's going to get rid of the trauma in our bodies. What's in our bones, as the teachers say, is deep. It doesn't, no yoga, no rigid posture is going to, mindfulness is going to actually asleep me, because it you know, it restores, I think, what's sacred in all of us, that we're these organisms that are deeply connected to the earth and the plants and the beings around us, with each other. And you know, there's a way that the system, we write about it, but we can't write it out of our bodies. It's like so inside our bodies. It's like you have to just rest our way through it, sleep our way through it, you know, care for ourselves, treat ourselves. Brian, I loved what you said about the, you know, the body and the shame and the ways that we're so hard. Or Elaine, you talked about, like, we sit so much with people, and it's like, what about this body? What about this baby that needs to sleep? You know, and just allowing ourselves to restore that sacredness, the care, the love, the compassion, the mammalian part of our lives. So, yeah. And the grace, David, really was powerful, because the teaching is about that. The teachers, you know, one of the teachers will say, it's not like we are defective or doing one more thing wrong. It's been conditioned to go. How to excavate the system out of us.
And I think something that I've been thinking about, so I've been struggling with this as well, like this sense of resting versus, you know, working, or what fits best for me. And I think something that I've been trying to shift my mindset around it when it comes to rest is, you know, starting to think about rest as my birthright. Like, because as someone who's a descendant of the enslaved, like my ancestors worked. My ancestor, you know, and I'm from Georgia. So my ancestors were in the field working every day, and there was a lot of sacrifice, and there was a lot that went into that. And when you talk about like things being passed intergenerationally, like how bodies become conditioned to work over time, you know, I'm sure that's been passed down into my lineage as well. I know it's been passed down because I still receive messages from family about, you have to work hard. You know, why aren't you working right now? You have to be productive. Keep going. And so I'm trying to shift my mindset around, you know, with this being my birthright, my ancestors would be super proud that I'm taking a moment, that I have the luxury of taking a moment to just rest and do nothing and just sit, you know? And that's where I'm thinking about this now. Like, it's really unlearning what's been passed down through the generations, and kind of creating something new, creating a new definition of what it means to be productive and what it means to reclaim my time and my energy. I don't know, that's just something that was coming up. I was thinking about as we're having this conversation. It's like, what's actually been passed down through the lineage, and how can we unlearn and redefine and take back what's our natural birthright?
Latrice, what you said, shared makes me think about like being kind to ourselves too, right? And that, I'm just thinking about like the sky view, and that is really sitting with me. And like this whole idea of kindness. When I think about kindness, I think about kindness towards others, right? But in actuality, it's also expressing kindness towards ourselves, through self-care, through grace, and through rest, right? And so that's the inward part. And then the outward part of kindness, I guess this is the yearning piece, how it kind of ties into it, but like being able to see the baby within all of us, right? Like we were once a baby, and you know how babies get all that attention and love and support, and nothing they do is wrong, right? And it's like, where does that get lost? Why, as a grown-up, people don't engage with me in the same kind way, right? And so that's something that I was also thinking about, as you mentioned that.
My heart is beating and full, and it's just full. And I know gratitude was mentioned, such gratitude to be able to just be human in community, and with grace, like you're saying, David, with kindness. How are people feeling? Are we feeling like we have spoken into the space as much as we need to? Yeah. And it's ongoing. Yay, we're in a journey together. So, would it feel okay to sort of draw this to a close? Yeah. And if it feels okay, just allowing the air to move into our bodies freely. And just trusting that the body knows innately how to release what doesn't serve us anymore. So just creating that allowance. Moving, releasing, releasing whatever has been arrested in our bodies. Lovingly, loving each part of our body as we offer ourselves this generosity. Then if you would like, you can place a hand upon your heart. And taking a moment to listen deeply. Not with expectation, not with instructions. Just a loving tending of our bodies. A deep allowance. does this body need in this moment? If it feels okay, just coming home and giving full permission to the body. And offering yourself deep appreciation for having taken this time as we spoke about it, this itself an act of grace, an act of kindness towards ourselves, an act of healing the healer inside, this act of resistance, this act of rewriting, like Latrice, what you spoke about, creating what would heal our bodies and the bodies of our ancestors when they were not able to do that. So breathing in deep kindness, deep compassion, deep appreciation, deep regard for ourselves. And releasing whatever needs to be released. Wishing wellness for ourselves, loving kindness for ourselves. Wishing that each of us and our community here, our community outside, our families, and extending as far as you'd like, that we all be free from inner and outer harm. Support ourselves in restoring our own humanity, which is deeply connected to restoring the humanity of those outside of our bodies. There's a beautiful poem by Hafiz, and he says, "We have not come here to take prisoners, but to surrender ever more deeply to freedom and joy. We have not come into this exquisite world to hold ourselves hostage from love and self-love," we could add. Run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Run like hell, my dear, from anyone likely to put a sharp knife into the sacred, tender vision of your beautiful heart. We have a duty to befriend those aspects of obedience of our house and shout to our reason, oh, please come out and play. For we have not come here to take prisoners or to confine our wondrous spirits, but to experience ever and ever more deeply our divine courage, freedom, and light. Let's take a few more breaths together, deep and nourishing and loving, and rest and resource and hold ourselves in what Sensei talked about, this inherent dignity, this inherent self-love, self-compassion. And as Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh would say, every step we take upon this precious earth that has been tended to by our land ancestors is ours. So let us be fully awake to it. Let us fall awake to it, internally and together in community. Whenever you're ready, you can allow the eyes to open, and remembering that we keep stitching this seamless, loving resistance into whatever unfolds as we meet and connect with whatever our commitments or obligations. That we center ourselves as we do it in full wakefulness. So beautiful, my dear people. If people want to share a one word as we wrap up, say our goodbyes, or okay to be silent, we can sing. I don't know. We have access to music, we can hum.
Love comes up. I'm feeling love. And hope that I and have intention to bring this feeling throughout the rest of my day.
I just feel grateful to be here and be in community with you all.
Just want to say thank you all for being a part of this process and being in this space. Really feel really good right now. So I appreciate that.
I also feel very, very grateful for this space. I'm very tired. I think I'm gonna nap after this.
I'd add, so I don't, that sustenance. I don't know. Like I feel like this is something that's going to help to sustain me for the rest of the day. And so I'm just very appreciative that I could be part of it.
I don't know. I guess I'll just say seen and heard. So that's two words, but just the sense of feeling seen by you all, heard by you all, felt by you all. So
Gratitude and deep respect and love. To be part and to belong to you all. And together. And Vanessa, that's deep resistance when you nap. Remember, you're
I love that. Be present, as Nick said, and let the chips fall where they may. Right now, your presence is saying it's sleepy time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.